Hi everyone, welcome to our daily show, The Big Story, where we bring you the hottest topics of the day right in the heart of the newsroom. I'm Rachel, coming to you live from the Straits Times. We are streaming live on YouTube and Facebook, so make sure to like, comment and share with your friends. Also click the bell button to be alerted whenever we are live. I have my newsroom colleagues joining me in the studio today to talk about the topics that got you talking. Singapore was added to a watch list for currency manipulation by the United States. This came after the US adjusted its criteria for the watch list. Now, countries with a current account surplus with the US, equivalent to 2% of Singapore's GDP, are eligible. I have Associate Editor Ravi Velo here to explain what this means for Singapore. Welcome to the show, Ravi.
Thank you, Rachel.
So, Ravi, can you tell us and the viewers at home, why is Singapore put on this watch list?
Well, it's a pretty accidental thing that happened earlier this year, or rather sometime late last year. The Americans looked around the world and said, hey, right now we have 12 countries on the watch list, but we're going to expand the criterion, and any country that has a trading relationship with the United States that exceeds 40 billion US dollars will be subject to scrutiny from the Treasury Department. As it happens, we have about 60 billion last year, and so we fell into this unhappy category.
Okay, and can you break it down for us? What does currency manipulation mean?
Well, really, in this context, what the Americans are talking about is the unfair manipulating of your currency to gain a trading advantage. Now, what does that mean? It means that the Sing dollar should be at a particular level, but that we are depressing the currency deliberately to help our export market. But that's not true. That's not what we do. The Sing dollar value is critical for our economy, for our economic management, because what the Monetary Authority of Singapore, which is our central bank, does is that unlike other central banks around the world that use interest rates to control inflation. Now, for every central bank, the primary responsibility is to control inflation. Various banks do it most central banks, they do it by controlling the interest rate. So if inflation goes up, they raise interest rates and they bring down inflation. But Singapore imports almost everything it needs, from fuel to food. So what it does is it uses the currency rate to control inflation. So it puts a certain band and it makes sure that there's a little movement within the band. But it certainly does not use the currency rate to improve its competitiveness in the world. Yeah.
And also the Monetary Authority of Singapore has also denied towards this accusation.
Right.
Now that Singapore is being put on a currency watch list, what does it mean for Singapore?
Well, precious little if you ask me. They can put you on any list they want, but what are they going to do? Put sanctions on you? Because you're importing more from the United States than they take from you. We're doing them a favor by taking more than selling to them. It really is a ridiculous thing that these people have done, unwise, and hopefully it's the last time they ever think of doing something like this.
And apart from Singapore, our neighboring countries, Malaysia and Vietnam, are also put on this watch list. Do you think this is a case of US playing the victim and shifting the blame to this country's chosen, instead of tackling their own economic problems?
I think it's a good question you asked me, Rachel, because there is truth in what you're suggesting. The Americans are fixated on trade as an index of their economic performance, which many think is unwise. And when they look around the world and they see that their competitiveness is not as strong as it should be, they look around and say that it's because they look for reasons, and then they find maybe some economies do play with the currency rates to improve their competitiveness, but Singapore is not one of them. If you look at our neighbors, you mentioned Malaysia, they have a $27 billion surplus with the Americans. I'm not saying that they manipulate the rates, but the fact is that they do a good job of it. Likewise with Vietnam, the US is a big market for them. Exports are booming in Vietnam, and it's convenient to blame it on the dong's value. But the fact is that the Americans need to get their act together and improve their own competitiveness so they can sell back into the world.
Okay, thank you, Ravi, for sharing your insights with us.
It's been nice chatting with you, Tracy.
Okay, thank you. Moving forward, gaming fans and enthusiasts, 2020 is your year. Gamescom Asia is coming to Singapore, and it will be held from October 15 to 18 next year. This is the first time Singapore will play host to the first Asian edition of the world's largest gaming festival, Gamescom. With me now is Haris Baharuddin to share what we can look forward to in this festival. Welcome to the show, Haris.
Hi.
So Haris, this is the first time the festival is being held away from Germany, which is being held there every year since 2009.
Correct.
So what are some of the exciting programs that viewers can look forward to?
So we don't know specifics yet about what the lineup will be. They have said that it'll be 2 days of industry, a gaming conference, and then 3 days of trade and a public exhibition, which includes things like probably esports events. You know, I'm guessing given how these conferences and festivals usually work, there might be things like games being announced, updates to games being developed. You'll probably see cosplayers there dressing as their favorite characters. So it's those kinds of things. So nothing is really clear yet, but traditionally the events of this scale, that there's a lot of excitement lah. And you know, you might even see new game announcements, new technologies even. Yeah, it's not really clear yet, but I do think that it's a good platform for our local guys, local developers to also showcase what they've been doing too. Yeah.
Okay, and we know that the gaming industry is about 187 billion.
Yes.
You know, the whole thing, and nearly 40% of their sales are in East Asia, especially South Korea and China. Why did they choose Singapore of all places?
So the organizers did say that they have been looking to move to Asia, but specifically, so when we talked to them yesterday at the press conference, they said that Singapore was a clear and obvious choice because of a few factors, including its central location and I guess our interconnectedness. You know, our internet speeds are very fast, and I think the widespread use of English also played a part in that. And I think another reason why they chose Singapore is because we have this other festival called GameStart Asia. So essentially Gamescom Asia will be taking over the time slot of that. So I think Gamescom Asia is going to sort of use the interest that GameStart Asia already has to make sure its event is successful. Yeah.
And how will this festival benefit Singapore?
Oh, well, the organizers have said that they're expecting about 30,000 people. That's a pretty big number, I think, for an event that's just starting out in its first edition. So this, and given the kind of brand recognition that Gamescom has, I think we will definitely drum up a lot of interest for, you know, gaming in Singapore lah. And also I think it's a big sign of support and encouragement for our local developers, I think, and the local people in the industry. I think they work very hard. You always see them trying to get their name out there, get their work out there, and it'll be a good platform for them to get their word out and get the word of their products out. And of course, I mean, as a gaming fan, it's always nice to be near to an event of this scale. I personally am very excited about it. I look forward to see updates that come along, and I'm quite sure a lot of regional fans will be coming here to check out what Gamescom Asia is like. Okay,
and what will you be looking forward to in this festival?
Personally, I think that announcements and updates about games that are in development or that are rumored about are always very exciting. I mean, that's always a highlight for all the gaming exhibitions and shows happen around the world. Yeah, so it'll be nice to have it in our own backyard.
Okay, thank you, Haris, for coming on the show and sharing this exciting news with us.
Sure, no problem, thanks.
Okay. Burnout has been increasingly accepted as a very real problem in the modern workplace. The World Health Organization has now defined burnout as a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. This can be seen in the 11th edition of WHO's International Classification of Diseases, or the ICD-11. I have journalist Ray Kurohi with me in the studio today to discuss what the updated guideline means for Singapore. Welcome to the show, Ray.
Thanks, Rachel.
So Ray, we know the symptoms of burnout include feelings of exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, and reduced professional efficacy based on what the ICD-11 has mentioned. What does this guideline mean for the future of Singapore's healthcare system, and how will that change the way our medical professionals and our employers tackle symptoms of burnout?
So there was actually some confusion over this story because WHO spokesman earlier said this week that it was the first time that burnout's being recognized as a medical condition, but they later clarified that what it actually is a problem associated with occupation. and the workplace that can affect your health or lead to you seeking treatment from a healthcare professional, but it's not a disease in itself. And in fact, it was actually listed in the previous edition of the ICD-10, but it was far less specific in its definition. So at its core, the inclusion in the ICD will basically legitimize the lived experiences of people who do feel burned out, because the ICD is kind of a guidebook, a directory, if you will, of diseases and medical conditions. So let's say you were to go to a doctor and say, "Doc, I feel burnt out at work." But if the doctor's not able to find that entry in the ICD, then the doctor might not treat it as seriously. So this really represents a way of recognizing that this is in fact a phenomenon that's happening. But because beyond healthcare professionals, it also has implications for, let's say, insurance. So insurance agencies do refer to the ICD codings when they make policy payouts. So there is some implication for healthcare financing. That being said, because it's not a medical conditions per se, it really remains to be seen how this will affect insurance or employment policies going forward.
Okay, and can you share with us what is ICD and what does it do?
Sure. So the ICD, the International Classification of Diseases, it's, as I mentioned, a kind of guidebook or database. And maintaining and updating it is one of the WHO's core functions. So it gets updated every so often. The last one, the last edition, the 10th edition, was in 1990, and the one before that, the ICD-9, 1978. So we're about up due for a new update. So it basically describes and categorizes diseases, injuries, conditions, and assigns each of them a specific code. This way, healthcare professionals can diagnose and track the conditions in a unified way. So you can have two doctors who don't speak the same language, but they can say, "Oh, this patient has 5A11," and then both doctors will know, okay, so that means type 2 diabetes.
Ah, I see.
This also allows the WHO to track and report healthcare trends around the world. And the inclusion of burnout and other conditions in the new edition is also a reflection of emerging trends. So just as we have laws that now account for emerging problems like fake news or technology-enabled voyeurism, so too in the healthcare sector, you have an update of the ICD to reflect emerging healthcare problems.
And one of them that we recently saw is the video game addiction.
Yes.
Yeah. So you want to talk more about that?
So whenever new conditions are included or whenever you update an existing condition, it's really to keep your healthcare systems up to date with emerging trends and current research and understanding. So gaming addiction is just another example of this. Of course, in the 1990s, your gaming addiction might not be as widespread as it is today, but today with the ubiquity of mobile phones, tablets, and other devices, you even have toddlers who are really hooked on these kind of apps and games. So it's emerged as a problem, and its inclusion in the ICD now will allow it to be recognized, treated, and tracked more properly.
And what are other new additions in this ICD-11 that we should know?
Well, so for gaming addiction, first of all, not everyone agrees that it should be recognized as such. And in fact, a South Korean gaming company has actually slammed its inclusion because they said it violates the right of a child to play. But as a gamer myself, I actually think that this is a good move because there are definitely some games that are designed to be very deliberately addictive and to keep players in a cycle of playing the game and spending money as well on transactions. So one other inclusion in the new edition of ICD is the declassification of gender incongruence as a mental health condition. So to put it in simple terms, this means that the WHO now no longer recognizes transgender people or people who are assigned one sex at birth but identify with a different gender as having a mental health condition. So the implication of this is basically that the WHO is no longer saying that the status of being transgender is a medical condition, but rather that it could be associated with medical conditions like depression and suicidality, which is of course a societal problem as well. So people who have hailed the move say that it will help to destigmatize the condition and allow people to access healthcare in a better manner.
Okay, I think our viewers want to know more about the burnt out condition. Do you think it's fair that WHO classify it as an occupational hazard? How about people who work freelance and are housewives? Would that be fair if they are burnt out and they can't go to a medical professional and have that legalized?
Well, the ICD-11 is quite specific in that it's associated with the workplace and occupation, and it shouldn't be kind of just applied to any other situation willy-nilly. But I think medical professionals will tell you that it is a real thing and that it is recognized. In fact, medical professionals themselves are some of the most burnt out people in the world. And we're talking about your physicians, clinicians, nurses, caregivers. And definitely, even if you're not formally in employment, let's say you're a caregiver and your loved one has a debilitating condition, and let's say dementia, for example, is one condition where the caregivers experience higher levels of burnout. So I think regardless of whether it can be recognized as a medical condition or an occupational hazard, I think its inclusion will allow medical professionals to be more aware of the condition and to accept its legitimacy. So yes, even housewives who feel burnt out by the work that they do in the home might be able to get support.
Okay, thank you, Ray, for being on the show today.
Thanks, Rachel.
So for more news on burnout, we have Hang Out with ST talking about it tonight at around 8 p.m. And those are our top stories of the day. For more news and videos, do log on to straitstimes.com. Once again, I'm Rachel. For more news, do log on to our show at 5:30 tomorrow.